Serious Sam's always been a titan for me. It's a series of games that started back when all you needed for a good title was a barrel plastered to the cameraman's chest and some one-liners. And as long as that action came in hot and heavy and it was solid in its controls, a game could do well for itself. Also, Serious Sam eclipsed many times other modern dystopias or gritty, dirty metal crunches of the dooms and the quakes and atmosphere, and instead said, you know what, dudes? Let's put this fucking thing in Egypt. You face off against Mental and his menagerie of bad guys, and guys is plural for a reason. Serious Sam's second claim to fame was the number of bad guys, all trying to see what would happen if 200 clowns got in the same car. And in this case, of course, clowns are headless dudes with bombs for hands, and you are the car. It worked. For Serious Sam in particular, for Serious Sam 2 as well, somewhat for Serious Sam 3, though by that time a little bit of rust was showing on that polish, and as the decades have gone by, we are now at Serious Sam 4. As always, if you like these kind of videos, give it a thumbs up, maybe subscribe, it absolutely helps. What follows are my impressions and current score for Serious Sam 4. You can call it a review in progress, but my progress has been stymied by a ton of things we're going to discuss today, because where the past titles had a tenacity to their patterns and a talent in their balance, Serious Sam 4 just doesn't feel like it has any of that. And where do I begin? So first, let's talk about the enemies. The enemies of Serious Sam games didn't always or most ever make sense. You have alien two-armed monstrosities walking around hijacking the pyramids and shooting lasers at you while you somehow reverse the S and W keys on your keyboard as you retreated while shooting forward, running backwards and to the side at the same time. It was nuts. It was that chaos that worked so well. It was brutal. It was fun. And those enemies always had an eclectic feel to them. Enemies flying and dying, you juking and moving and shooting and sliding, and always knowing one thing: the enemies were in great number, but they couldn't hit shit. Their accuracy made the 99% misses in XCOM look like critical hits. And the game's greatness was that the enemies were making stormtroopers look like fucking marine snipers all the time, while it also made you feel like a badass. That was the ride, barely missing enemies, and much of this was due to those unique looks and their designs and how they were packed together. Here in Serious Sam 4, you do have a couple different varieties of enemies, like vampires that send spirits at you and then transport by turning into flocks of bats, landing on top of various bits of the architecture and then flitting away. This is nice, and those guys feel awesome, especially with a shotgun as you burn them up into separate bits of ash and fire when you kill them. But nothing comes close to the original Syrian werebull, which is something that you face off multiple times here. No new designs feel nearly as good as the classics. This is also stymied from start to finish by level design that is basic even by Serious Sam's basic level design structure. The Serious games have never been into complex architecture, and that's fine because their excellence was the balance between balls-to-the-wall shooting and backpedaling tomfoolery as you counted out ammo, hoping to not hit a wall behind you before a bad guy died in front of you. There was an amazing ballet that occurred here where you sidestep chain whip balls and lasers and switch from shotguns to kill the skeletons to the machine guns to kill the headless. And imagine my disappointment when here in Serious Sam 4 that almost never feels as slick. The level design is just one square leading to a larger square that has you running in just deep enough so that it can, boom, spawn enemies. Many of these areas feel smaller and even less flexible than prior Sam titles. That's a mix of both the locations as well as the architecture itself. Everything is built on box-like patterns, which is something that we've seen in the prior games, but here it doesn't feel old school as much as it feels old. It's backed up by some pretty solid shooting, that's for sure. Serious Sam games have never really had an issue with that. But even that gets a bit long in the tooth when you're fighting some boring-ass boss creature who apparently is just throwing tires and cans at you as the main bad guy and some fire is around you. The main bosses just aren't interesting, which means an uninteresting battle is ended by an uninteresting boss on an uninteresting battlefield. I gotta say, it was also surprising that throughout the models and the enemies and just sheer detail and design of them has not really kept even close to other games in this generation. Titles where even indie groups have high-definition textures and at least intricate design. I think Serious Sam has always got away with it with saying, hey, you know what, you're facing a bunch of something, but those bunches don't look good either singly or in a group. Also, the touted thousands of enemies on screen feature doesn't show up as much as you would like. For a bit of the game, yes, but not nearly as much as it actually should. And while this may be fixed with mods or people who make levels in the game, speaking of what you get, let's talk about performance. It's not exactly rock solid. Now, they did warn me ahead of time there were some issues. Vulkan was not working at the time of this preview. There was just issues everywhere, but both DX11 and DX12 did work, but they had some serious dips in performance regardless, even during normal gameplay at 4K. Luckily, the game does keep up that Serious Sam tradition of having a ton of options, even though those options in this game are weirdly hidden behind other options, giving you this Russian nesting doll setup for their adjustments. It's very easy to miss them, so pay attention when you're in the option screens. Also, there's a ton of pop-up. Any setting, any different location I went to, there was a lot of pop-up in the game world, and this was installed on both an NVMe as well as an SSD to test it. They do say a patch is ready for day one to fix the graphical issues, so your mileage may vary. Where Serious Sam seriously fails, though, is any time spent on anything other than the shooting, which itself is pretty mediocre now. First, graphically, this camera should be as far away from the main characters as humanly possible because, damn, most of them are straight up early PS4, later Xbox 360 level with all kinds of weird issues with faces and eyes. It's like a mannequin factory came to life. This is last gen. The last time I've seen a game's main characters look like this, it was like Operation Flashpoint. No, I don't mean Arma 2 or 3. I mean Operation Flashpoint. This hasn't been a problem much in the prior games because they obviously knew what tech they were using and that it wasn't strong in that regard. But here, it's like someone forgot for Serious Sam 4, and boom, you're face to face with terror in many different moments. It's also that the game bogs everything down with any story that doesn't move you from those different locations, and it stops you so that you can now realize how poor everything looks around you. Or it gets lost in the occasional weird escort mission that doesn't really have to be an escort mission because the escorts don't seem to be able to really die easily, but they also don't use any items most of the time. It's just weird design through and through for a lot of the game. Now, musically, I was hoping for something epic as I have liked it in past Serious Sam games. There's a couple headbangers here. There's some battle tunes I did like. It's most of the heavy industrial rock kind of sound, but it gets boring pretty quick. That leaves us with voice. Now, I'm bringing up voice just because Serious Sam is known for it. That's the way it is, but it gets boring here. Half of the time, what they say doesn't really make sense, and it's like the writers sort of gave up, and in that way, their creation of Serious Sam, which was in itself a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek joke at other games, also gets tired. It feels like everybody doesn't really know what to say, and many times they actually have to explain the joke to you. It just doesn't work, and it's not a breaking the fourth wall kind of thing. Every moment wasted on anything other than the shooter seems to be taking away from the things that it needs, like balancing, enemy design, maturation. How much fun is it, though? Because, I mean, you have to have your damned expectations in check with a game like this, right? Well, that is right, but they're asking a pretty high price as well. And the fun, it's just not there right now. I get it. This is not a full new game. We have repeats of weapons and ideals and ideas and enemies, but it never gets going even as a sequel. And at some point, I just said, you know what? Enough's enough. I put it down. I will return to it at a later time when I have nothing to play, when the graphical issues are fixed, and perhaps, hopefully, by that time, there's some balancing that has been put into place. But currently, the architecture, the enemies, the weapons, the gameplay, and sort of the things that we've been promised just haven't come to fruition for me. For now, these are my impressions. Decidedly low end, even with the game's more budget price at $40. But I think with the lack of split screen and the lack of other things that you would expect in a title like this, Serious Sam 4, not looking so good. You know, I just got to sit back and think, where the hell did this go wrong? I just don't get it. I'm sure some people are probably going to like it and be like, this is the greatest game of all time. But you just look at it and you play it and you start to see all of this crap fall apart and you start to realize just how poor it is, especially when it comes to the level design. There's a confusion there that you consistently see as you progress throughout the game. And it's very, very disturbing. It makes me wonder exactly where this thing went wrong. Why did the focus shift over to the story versus just having the focus be on a game that is, in and of itself, familiar to us, but also deserves the sequel title in its name? I don't know why I got really high on that part. But anyway, that's the game for me. That's my thoughts on it. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. I'd like to know what you guys think when this comes out. And I would love to see them improve this title. This is a title, when I was doing the review of it, I just stopped and I was like, this is just not working out. There's so many issues and there's so many problems with it. I'm going to do an impressions video because I got it a little late and return to it. And as I was playing other titles, I decided, you know what, let's boot up Serious Sam 2 and 3, and let's boot up 1, and let's see if these games are as good as I remember. And I have to admit, when I was playing those, there's a feeling to them, especially in their level design, which is something I'll be interested in seeing if you guys agree with, that really resonated with me, that is nowhere to be found in this game. So anyway, hope you liked the video. Check out Reddit and Facebook. You can also become a patron. Patron helps, guys. I get demonetized with everything. I know some people get mad. They're like, how dare he at the end of a video talk for 30 seconds about Patron? But you're going to have to deal with it. Patron absolutely helps. If I've saved you any money or possibly warned you away from a shitty game, jump into the Patreon. You can get Discord. We have a great group to discuss titles and put together games for the weekend. We do D&D in there. We do group chats of all kinds. It's fantastic. Plus, maybe get some merch at the different levels. That's it for me. I hope you have a stupendous week. Also, make sure to check for the video of Mafia Definitive Edition. That review is also coming today.